Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thrive and Shine HR. This is going to be a pretty incredible episode. I'm really excited to be talking to you all today about sobriety. And, this is one of those episodes where I really miss and wish my former co host, Catherine Fry, could be here for this conversation because it's vulnerable. It can be really uncomfortable to talk about something like addiction and what the journey to recovery looks like. And we're going to do it. We're going to go there today. So, anyway, sit tight and let's go ahead and get started with the intro. Welcome to Thrive and Shine HR, a podcast dedicated to women in human resources looking to push past the self-doubts, imposter syndrome, and self-criticism that's keeping them from being able to show up as the very best version of themselves, both at work and in life. Here's your host with over 24 years experience in human resources and a certified life coach, Jen Trum. Okay, I don't know if the sound actually worked on the live cast, but that's okay. When we get this into the podcast, I'll go ahead and bloop, bloop, bloop and do a little bit of editing and make sure that you were able to hear that intro. So, welcome to episode 54 of Thrive and Shine HR. My name is Jen, and I am I am still an HR leader for over 25 years and also a certified life coach. And my goal with Thrive and Shine HR is to really be able to talk about the things that I think so often are hidden and masked in the field of HR. And that's really about our own emotional, mental, and really overall well-being for HR professionals. And so this episode is really, really special to me. And it's about addiction. And for someone who has struggled off and on with addiction throughout my life, I'm going to really want to be very open and transparent with you today so that I'm not holding anything back when it comes to my own addictions and my own struggles over the years with being able to find my road towards sobriety. So I can recall very, very vividly, my son is now 17 years old, but when he was about 10 years old, so about 7, 8 years ago, I was working as an HR director for an organization and I was so burnt out. I was overwhelmed. I was pushing myself harder than I really should have ever pushed myself. But yet I truly believe that the more that I did push myself, the more I was going to be able to prove myself, the more I was going to be able to be seen as respectable and someone who belongs to have a seat at the table, right? There were so many narratives and stories that went on in my head at that time around what I think I needed to be in order to be respected and valued and appreciated. And deep down, I was struggling with those things myself badly. And so at that time, my son, he was working on a big project for school. It was one of those um, building up of a foundation of a gosh, it was some kind of mission or some kind of, special place that he was putting together. And we had all kinds of, tools and things that we used to build it. And when the day came for him to turn it in, he, took it in with him at school. And during that day, I ended up getting hit with a really challenging investigation at work. It was very, very unfortunate, the situation, but there were multiple people who were part of the housekeeping department of the company that I worked with who really believed that one of our maintenance employees was repeatedly engaging in uncomfortable behavior towards them. And over time, they have learned, especially through their culture, to hold back and not bring things out in the open, because the more that we talk about them, the more that we'll be punished for it, or the more that, it won't end up being, a good thing. I'll end up losing my job, or someone else will lose their job. And so they ended up holding this secret for several years. And it ended up coming out on the day that my son turned in this project. So as I went through the course of that particular day, I was so stressed out. I was already so stressed out with like 9,000 things at work that now I'm not doing, because I'm needing to focus on this issue. And not only was the language a huge barrier, how was I going to be able to communicate with these individuals? So I was needing to bring in one of our other managers from another department who could help translate, and the whole thing was awkward and uncomfortable, and it was really difficult for many of them to want to talk about what's been going on. Many of them, even though the individual who initially reported this said, this person, by the time we got to that person and that person, they were no longer comfortable saying a word, right? So they came into the conversation just completely on lockdown. And so being able to pull out and get, the truth of what was happening was really tough. So anyway, as I went through the course of this unfortunate day where I ended up having to address something that was really significant for the organization, all I could think about throughout the course of the day wasn't my son and his project and how did it go. It was about how soon I could get home and have that first drink. How soon could I be holding that glass of wine and the feeling of that wine going down my throat and just soothing me from the stress and the anxiety and the vulnerability and the discomfort that I was feeling in that moment. So I will never, ever forget that when I started to go through, I've been starting on my sobriety journey now for, gosh, over 5 years. And when I first started going down my sobriety journey, that was one of the standout moments where, when I ended up coming home that night from that incredibly difficult investigation that I worked on, the first thing I did was went for that glass of wine. The second thing I did was down it as quickly as I could. The third thing I did was fill it up again and have some more, right? What I didn't do throughout the course of that entire evening was check on my son and hear about how it went with his project. It wasn't until the next day, and the shame and embarrassment and anger with myself, that I would have forgotten something so important to my son in that moment, right? And so there was a reflection point through my sobriety journey where I look back on that moment, where I realized that next day what had happened. And I was really aware. I was really aware in that moment of how much I was allowing the substance, how much I was allowing this thing to control my brain when it came to ultimately what was me not wanting to feel the discomfort that was present in the moment that was in front of me, right? And so when I look back on that, I can see it so clearly. And over the course of, like I said, my 5 year journey, I have to keep reminding myself, because for me, alcohol was something, and has been something, that's been a part of my life for over 30 years. And so trying to rewire the circuits that have been within my brain that have created that go-to escape or go-to comfort that alcohol gave me for so long has been a process, let me tell you, but absolutely a process that is worthwhile and so, so important for me as I continue to discover myself, and as I continue to really recognize that through the power of self awareness and understanding what really is causing my triggers, or what's really causing me to feel like I need to go run to something, or feel like in my brain I need to self soothe with that thing. So, another thing that comes up for me often is sugar. right? Where I will be really feeling discomfort about a situation. Let's say I'm on a Zoom call and I'm talking with a group of benefit people about some benefit program that is just dying. And to get me through, one thing that I'll notice sometimes that I'll do is I'll say, okay, as soon as I'm done with the Zoom call, I'm going to have, a candy bar. I'm going to go into the store. I'm going to go into, where I work. I'm going to go grab a candy and I'm going to enjoy that so much for getting through. And I strongly believe that it's so great for us to have rewards that we give ourselves when it comes to being able to meet certain goals and milestones. But we have to be careful when those certain goals that we're setting for ourselves seem to be constant, right? It's like always trying to find that next fix, that next thing that we can go to be able to self-soothe or self numb away and be able to get back to what we see in our own brains as some form of equilibrium. But really, when we're using any sort of substance, when we're using sugar or alcohol or marijuana or anything else that we might use, ultimately, we need to start asking ourselves some questions. So that's really what today's episode is going to be all about. We're going to ask ourselves some serious questions when it comes to whether or not we ourselves are struggling with something that is causing us to self-medicate, and what we might want to really start putting in place today that can help us rewire ourselves and start moving ourselves in a direction that is going to be more open to the present, open to the reality of what is in this moment, rather than needing and having this sense that I need to do something about it. So, with that, let me make sure I caught my notes for this first part of the episode. Okay, so before we get into the 5 questions that we should be asking ourselves about whether or not we struggle with an addiction, I want you to take a moment and think about whether or not there's a friend, a colleague, or somebody in your life who could benefit from this type of information, because I know that in my life, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but number one, the number one thing that has helped me more than anything else be able to recognize where I am holding myself back through self-medicating and numbing behaviors was through community, was through connecting with other people. So I want to encourage you to think of those people who really could benefit, who are part of your community that really would benefit from this type of content, and send it to them today. All right, so, and before we get started as well, I want to really do a shout out to our sponsor today, Thrive 360. So if you've not heard of Thrive 360, I am so excited to share with you that my interview for next week's podcast is Christy Lamka. She is the COO and badass at Thrive 360 who has really revolutionized how we look at mental health and mental health care in organizations. Christy is going to come on and we are going to have a really powerful conversation about how much has changed over the last 5 years since COVID when it comes to how we talk about mental health and what we're actually doing to walk the walk, to really be able to show our organizations and show the world that we can really be able to infuse a whole human being approach in our organizations that can help us truly be able to thrive as we go towards this next 20, 30, 50 years, right? I think so much has changed over the last 5 years. And I think that the power that we have within HR is really being able to recognize that how we take care of ourselves, how we take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health is everything in how we show up and also how the people that we lead show up at our organizations. So once we start really taking that seriously, that's when we're going to start to see the shift that we so often talk about and dream about in our roles and organizations. And Thrive 360 is an organization that I truly believe can help get us there because they customize their content through the well acclaimed doctors and psychiatrists and other healthcare professionals, and they customize that content for your employees and for you. That's really about where you and your employees might be struggling. And they look at that approach based on how can they really meet us where we are, right? It's not off the shelf. It's not one size fits all. It's really about I am struggling right now with being able to not feel like I'm losing control. I am struggling right now with insomnia that's causing me to just feel spun out and all over the place without being able to be relaxed and calm. So what are the things that you are struggling with, and how can Thrive 360 be able to support you in your growth? So I encourage you to reach out to them. I'll put a link in our show notes today, and tell them Jen sent you for not only a free demo of Thrive 360, but also a discount of your first month of Thrive 360. So check it out in the link. All right, so let's jump in and let's talk about whether or not you, I, us, whether or not we need to have a more important conversation when it comes to addiction. And I truly, truly believe that every person out there, and I'm looking at you and I'm talking to you, every single person out there struggles with some form of addiction and have in their lives. Whether or not it's a substance, or whether or not it's our own thinking, whether or not it's an addiction to Netflix, whether or not it's video games, whether or not it's food and shopping, whether or not it's exercise, it doesn't matter. I've seen it all. And really, one of the questions that has come up for me recently when it comes to whether or not we have something that's important for us to become aware of that's causing us to numb out, self medicate, self soothe, and escape, right? And so the 5 questions that we have are really going to help you be able to look inside and pull off the onion layer, if you will, and be able to say, okay, wait, is this something that I really need to start taking a closer look at? And then what we're going to do at the end of this episode is we're going to give you 5 steps, and actually 6 steps. So don't let me forget the 6. We're going to give you 6 steps that are going to help you start today, start to become more intentional about how you can start shifting your own narrative around addiction. So with that, I want to take a small step back and really talk about what exactly is addiction. What does it mean to be addicted to something? And one of the definitions that I love so, so much is from a book called This Naked Mind. And it's about alcohol, but it's really about finding freedom within our own minds. And the sub part of the book is Find Freedom, Discover Happiness, and Change Your Life. And it's written by Annie Grace. I'll put a link in the show notes for the book. But what she really encourages us to be aware of is what are the different ways that within our own selves that we tune out, that we escape, that we repeatedly find ourselves not wanting to feel what we're feeling, or find ourselves wanting to control how we're feeling. And I think that was one of the tips for me that really helped me understand my brain just a little bit more. Because what I was really finding and what I was really recognizing was how much I wanted to be in control of my own feelings, how much I wanted to be at the driver's seat, and whether or not it was just numbing it away so I didn't have to feel the discomfort, or I didn't want to feel anything that was not happy and joyful and positive and free and da 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 da. So I would find that in the early days with drinking, that's exactly what I would want to do is I would use alcohol, I would use marijuana, I would use sugar as a way of feeling more happy. I would want to find this path towards getting those dopamine fixes so that I could get back to a place that was what I consider to be Jen. But the reality was, right, I was using something to try to push away what might have been true for me in that moment. And every single time we do this, and this is something that Annie Brace talks about in the book, every single time we do that, we're actually denying ourselves from being able to have a sense of truth of what truly is, what truly is. And what I mean by that is whenever I'm trying to deny what is, I'm taking away from myself an opportunity to perhaps really be able to understand myself just a little bit more. So let's say, for example, I am in a meeting, and during that meeting, it starts to get a bit uncomfortable because you notice a couple of the people in the meeting are starting to get tense. There's some conflict brewing. There's some, no, I said this, no, I said this, and I meant this, and you did not, you meant this. And you're sitting back and you're a part of the meeting, but yet you're almost in this out of body experience, right? That's actually how I see substances, and I see anything that we do, any behavior that we engage in that actually takes us away from being truly present with what is. And as somebody who is really masterful and has become really masterful in that over the years, I now think it's one of the things that now that I'm starting to really embrace my sobriety journey, I'm recognizing that every time I have a moment that sends me into discomfort, that is a moment worth revisiting. That is a moment of let's understand why this might bother me, right? It's other people who might be feeling conflict that may have nothing to do with me doesn't have to bother me, right? Isn't it a choice within myself that it might bother me so much that now I'm wanting to disengage or check out in some way? And so being conscious of that, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be anything you change in the moment. And let's say, you have a candy bar right in front of you during that meeting and I quickly open it up and I start chewing on it. That doesn't need to be a wrong thing necessarily, but it is something to become aware of why you felt that that was something you needed to move you away versus understanding the thoughts that might be going on in your mind that caused you to be uncomfortable in the first place, right? And so I think that recognizing that there is something much bigger, that there's something bigger happening within us that is causing us to go through those patterns of then going to the drink, going to the puff, going to the food, right? Going to the thing that can then help us feel like we can move whatever is uncomfortable out of the way. So then I can be more, what is it, uncomfortably or comfortably numb. Yeah, comfortably numb. So that is so, so important to really start to gain that awareness around so that we can really sense and see what's really happening. underneath. And what we might really be holding on to are our insecurities, that perhaps we might be worried that others might be judging us, that we're not getting involved, right? Let's say that we really know that one of those individuals is that's absolutely the opinion that you share. But yet, I don't want to get in the drama, right? Have you been there before? I know that you have, and I have as well, where you see something going down. You definitely see that perhaps there is a misunderstanding that might be happening and a lack of clarity that might be happening. But rather than engage ourselves in the moment, we disengage. Same idea, right? It's something that we're doing where deep down we know the truth and we're making a conscious choice not to do anything about it, which sometimes, right, not doing anything at all, there can be kind of an addiction to that. There's kind of that freeze process that many of us engage in that can become addictive, right? Not doing something about it means I can stay safe. I can remain comfortable. I don't have to take a risk putting myself out there. So, question for you, right? Are you using something? Are you using alcohol, food, your freeze response? Are you using marijuana, smoking? Is there something that you are using to avoid difficult emotions or escape when you don't want to be feeling the emotions that you're feeling and instead want to be feeling happy, fun, joyful, whatever, put in the blank? So I'm going to pause at that and I want you to take a moment and just really reflect on that. Is there anything in your life? And if there is, you know it. You don't need me to tell you that there's something that you're doing that is not really deeply serving you and is instead allowing you to escape and or numb. Okay, that's question number one. Question number two. Do I feel anxious, irritable, or restless when I can't have access to this substance or behavior? Oh my gosh, right? That story that I told at the beginning, where all I could think about during that investigation was alcohol. Amazing example for anyone who's ever been addicted to alcohol. Another example that I have not too long ago was now that I am moving away from alcohol, I've noticed that now my go-to is sugar. And so I want it so bad. It's something that I obsess about, especially if I'm in a situation that I'm not comfortable in. So I had to be on a bus not too long ago, and I was sitting on the bus and I saw an advertisement up on the side of the bus and it was for some sugary drink, and I didn't want the sugary drink, but it was smelly on the bus. It was uncomfortable on the bus. I was in a seat where I'm kind of squished up to the side, and all I could think about was the sugar and wanting sugar and needing to get the sugar and I got to find the sugar, right? And so my brain was almost on this loop around what it was that I could think about that could keep me from having to be really present in the discomfort that I was in while I was on the bus. And so I really found myself in this very curious spot when I caught myself as I was about halfway through my ride. And I said, oh, isn't that interesting? That I am in a loop around something that I know that could help take me away, right? It's like, Calgon, take me away. And here I am kind of going through this loop around what I think is going to take away my present day discomfort. But is that necessary? And what is that really solving for? And why do I feel like I need this substance that's going to solve for something that really I am in control of all along? And can I become curious around what it is that's causing me to find this such a problem? So I can offer that for anyone out there who's really struggling with something in your life, where you find that then you've got that go-to that helps take it away, that helps kind of move it away for a while. Start becoming curious, and that's going to be, our 5 steps when we get to the end of the episode. But start becoming curious around, what is that about? Why do I feel that I need to obsess over escaping, or immediately find that substance or thing that's going to help me not feel so uncomfortable in this moment? What is going on? Why do I feel that that needs to be something that I push away from? What is it making me feel about myself? What is it making me feel about others? How can I start flushing it out so that I can be really calm and it's completely fine? I'm here. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to be off the bus in 5 minutes. I don't need to stress about it. And I also can find maybe 5 things in that moment to be grateful for, which is what I did on that second half of that bus trip. I looked around the bus and I found 5 things easily, right? I found somebody who had the coolest purple bag, which I am a purple fanatic. I saw somebody who was engaged in a really cute conversation with their kiddo. I saw the bus driver singing along and kind of bouncing to some music. So I was able to start getting into their groove a little bit. I saw a couple that looked like they were just coming back from a trip, and they were chit-chatting about some of the memories. So much that I could see in that moment, instead of the spin that my brain was causing and creating, I could instead slow myself down a little bit and say, hey, what's going on? What's happening right here? And can I, in this moment, find 5 things that I can be grateful for, that are kind of cool in this moment, that might help lift me up a little bit without feeling like I need to be thinking about or doing something else that's going to take me away from where I am. So, okay, so with that, let's ask question number 3. Question number 3 is, have I promised myself that I would cut back, but I continue to repeat the same pattern? So I'm going to go back to the addiction to freezing, the addiction to not doing anything, the addiction to holding ourselves back when deep down we know that there's something that we could be doing. And deep down, we kind of wish we were. So this is an addiction that I think is about fear, right? It's about the fear of rejection, which is something I strongly struggle with. If you've listened to the episode ever, you know that I struggle with an anxious attachment style, which in my relationships means I'm like, oh, come, 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 come. And then when I start feeling as though that individual might be against me in some way, or that I might feel disconnected in some way, or that I might feel like they're disconnecting from me, I'm avoidant, right? So this bouncing back and forth causes a lot of in and out and in and out, and are we and aren't we, and anxiety within me that has been a lifelong pursuit to work through. But as it comes up in my relationships, I also know how much it comes up when it comes to the things that I am doing that I don't want to be doing. And the biggest one for me that I do not want to be doing is biting my nails. I've been a nail biter my entire life, since I've very first memories, I think. And yet here I am at 50 years old, still bite my nails. I have acrylic nails that keep me from biting them mostly, but I still find a way. And that is about my anxiety, right? It's about me not being able to process through the doubts, the worries, the insecurities, the things that come up for me that cause me to then feel like I need to revert to a behavior that can help soothe, right? It's like sucking our thumb or a pacifier. And that I think is the same with anything that we can be addicted to, right? The biting my nails, the freezing, any alcohol, any drugs, anything. And every single one of us have something that comes up for us that we struggle with at different times that we would want to be able to cut back on, that we would want to be able to perhaps reduce, change, shift in some way. And yet, we find ourselves continuing to go back into those same patterns, continuing to go back into the things that help self-soothe and comfort us when we're feeling anxious and overwhelmed. So if you are one of those people, just know you're not alone, right? Like I said, I'm the nail biter. But what I can offer you is the more that you become aware of it, the more that you can bring a light of consciousness to it, the more it's going to be huge in being a catalyst to help shift you into the behaviors that you really want to be able to do that are going to be more the person that you want to be, like me, not being so much of a nail biter. And it has improved so much over the years. And then I find myself sometimes slipping back at different times because of life. And I think that's okay sometimes when we have those ebbs and flows when it comes to the things that we want to change, that we want to shift in our life, when life hits us, when life be lifing, to be able to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be consciously aware that this is something that I'm going to give myself a little grace on, but I'm also going to come back to this and I'm going to be very intentional about that. And here's when it starts, right? Setting some clear goals with yourself. We'll get to that too in our in our last 5 or 6 on what we can start doing today. Okay, question number 4 on whether or not you might be doing something that is become a problem. Is my use or behavior impacting my work performance, relationships, or overall well-being? And this is something to look at even subtly, right? Even in the smallest ways, is your use of that substance or your behavior causing your relationships, causing your work, causing anything that's important in your life, your health and your well-being to suffer in any way? And really being honest about it, because that level of honesty and transparency, if you're not having it with yourself, if you're saying to yourself, oh, it's not that big a deal, oh, it's, not something that I think is going to be a problem, then I want you to really pay attention to this next question, because question number 4 is, if nothing changed, would I feel okay about this behavior, about this activity, about using this substance? Am I going to feel okay about this in 5 years? And really being honest with yourself with the answer. Because if you're really honest with yourself about the answer, then I think that it's time that you're really honest with yourself around what that means for you today. And what that means for you today is, one, how do we start collectively being able to talk to and snuff out the things that we really are ready to shift from? And that begins, I think, with going through the 6 steps that I'm going to share with you here in just a second. I'm going to take a sip of water. And I want to do one more very quick shout out for Thrive 360. This time, I want to talk a little bit more about what exactly Thrive 360 is. So, again, Thrive 360 is a program that helps mental health in workplaces. It helps meet you and your employees exactly where you are so that you can have a customized solution with world renowned doctors and therapists so that you can find the types of programs that are really going to help you and your employees exactly where you are. So, whether it's stress, whether it's burnout, whether it's grief or loss of a loved one, whatever that might be, Thrive 360 can meet you there. So, I want to encourage you to get a free demo from my great friend Christy Lamco over at Thrive 360 and click on the link in the show notes for this episode for your free demo and also for a discount for your first month of Thrive 360. All right, everybody, let's get back to the finality of this episode. We're going to wrap up our conversation today, and we are going to give you 6 things that you can start doing today that I truly believe are going to help you be able to shift your way of thinking and your patterns of behavior that are going to help you rise into the person that you really want to be. Because ultimately, you and I both know that these behaviors and these substances, they're not serving us. And so until we can get truly honest with ourselves about that and truly start to be able to put into practice some new behaviors, right? Some new ways of thinking, we're never, ever going to be able to truly get out of the rut that we're in. So, number 1 is get curious and not critical. Becoming curious it's really hard, especially when shame can feel so comfortable. What do I mean by that? I'm sure you're asking. So many, many, many of us have gotten into internal patterns within ourselves where we screw up and we beat ourselves up, and we believe that through the process of beating ourselves up, we're going to be better next time, right? We're going to do better next time. All I needed to do was kind of beat the shit out of myself this time. So then that way I really understood, right? Unfortunately, neuroscience and psychology has all debunked the crap out of this way of thinking. And if we are ever going to truly shift ourselves away from patterns of behavior that are really not serving us, it has to start with becoming more curious rather than critical. And so it means really being honest and recognizing within yourself the patterns of behavior that you have engaged in repeatedly over time. Like for myself, I still catch myself. Just yesterday, I found myself beating myself up over something that I did that I wasn't proud of and not realizing that that was really what I was doing until hours later when I then came back and kind of reflected upon the circumstance that happened with my partner and I, and then recognizing, oh my gosh, after that happened, after I screwed up and did this thing that I really shouldn't have said or done, rather than just going back to my partner, owning it, saying, hey, here's what I recognize. Can we talk about this? And maybe we can really help me so that I don't continue to engage in this pattern again. Instead, I isolated myself. I didn't engage in any sort of conversation. I immediately went into overworking and flooding myself with other thoughts and other things that can get me away from having to feel anything else about having that happened. Right. And so now I'm trying to just push away something that is still kind of bothering me because I felt bad about it. So behaviors that I'm now engaging in, this isolating, this overthinking, this you know, pushing away of really taking full and complete and transparent ownership of myself and where I am and where I want to be, was what I can see now as this missed opportunity, right? But in the moment, that was what I really needed to self-soothe myself from the discomfort of recognizing that I screwed up. And catching that 12 hours later, 10 hours later, whatever it was, I think I think one of the things that I do, and I know that so many others do, is the pattern that we can get into is that when we do catch ourselves for not responding or reacting into a situation as well as we may have wanted to, rather than having some compassion, some grace, some understanding that perhaps, we're still learning and our subconscious is cunning and baffling and very, very smart. And so if it takes us a while to sometimes get the true awareness of perhaps how we really wanted to respond and react to a situation, yay, you know? So that's great that we finally came to a place to see it. But what we end up doing is once we come to a place where we can see what we were doing, the hole that we were digging for ourselves, we then just start compounding that hole with more of a hole because now we're shaming ourselves for the fact that we didn't catch ourselves earlier, right? So this perpetual cycle that we find ourselves in is where curiosity is where the power of the pause and curiosity is going to be the thing that saves your life, and truly has been the thing that saved my life over and over and over again. That power of pausing, reflecting, and recognizing, hey, it's okay. It's okay that I didn't respond and react the way that I would have wanted to, but I'm here now and I can change right now, right? I don't need to perpetuate the cycle starting now. So that's number one. And it is such a bullet because it is our superpower, is pausing when we find we are going down the track of disconnection, isolation, a sense of a lack of belonging, a sense of a lack of not feeling seen and heard, right? Any of the things that are pushing us away from being able to go inward and really flesh out what might be going on. So number two is really, I think, the tool that's going to help you get there, and that's through journaling. So one of the things that really helped me through the book that I shared with you earlier, The Naked Mind by Annie Grace, is the power of reflecting through journaling, is getting the thoughts down on paper that's going to help you be able to really see what's really going on in our thoughts and in our narratives. What stories are we telling ourselves? How are we spinning our reality in such a way that we truly believe that we need to go to this substance. We truly believe that we need to engage in this behavior and it's going to serve us in some way. And how can we become more reflective on that? And I think journaling has been a massive, massive tool to help me be able to do that. I have been a part of a gratitude group for almost a year now, and I've talked about that on the podcast a few times because if you do not have one, create one. It was one of the most courageous and brave things that I have ever done in my life, and something I am still so, so proud of. And it's given me the opportunity to put my truth out there and to force myself to be grateful anyway. Like I said on the bus earlier, what can I do to be grateful anyway, regardless of my circumstances? Journaling can be a really great way of like forcing that flush out, even if it's hard, even on the days it's so hard. Go outside, sit down or stand, look around and play the game. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel that you can be grateful for in that moment that can help redirect you in that moment? So journaling is such a great way to start bringing that out in you in a more natural way. So then that way, when you do pause, when you do find yourself in a situation where you've become triggered and you want to escape and you want to find that substance or that tool or that behavior that's going to help get you out of here as fast as you possibly can, you now can start to recognize what might help be able to slow you down just a little bit so that you might be able to see what might be going on. All right, number 3, building a replacement ritual. I have heard over and over and over again that the only way you're ever going to be able to move away from a habit that's not serving you is by replacing it with a habit that you want to build in your life, right? I think that I know for myself, I have this really weird thought loop in my head around habits not being good, right? Habits are a bad thing, and I don't want habits. I need to get rid of my habits. And the reality is, there are some serious habits that every single one of us need to build in our lives that is going to be everything when it comes to truly being able to shift away from the habits we don't want to have. We have to be willing to create and build through practice habits that are actually going to help us become the person we want to be. And so for me, one of the things that I realized as I was moving away from alcohol and from marijuana, that I had a doctor who had shared with me that Nicorette gum, that the nicotine patches, that's something that can actually help as you're transitioning from the dopamine fix pattern routine. As you're moving away from that, to be able to have some kind of tool to help you do it in an effective way. I know another thing that works amazing for me is the habit of getting in community. The habit of going to 12-step meetings for me, but whatever that is for you. But the habit of being a part of community is huge. And the habit of being a part of something where I have to be of service in some way has been everything. So what is that for you? Like, what are the habits that you know that you want to build within yourself that are going to help really drive the positive behaviors you want to build in your life? So I know for me, again, exercise, meditation, these are the habits that I practice religiously. And yet sometimes, especially when I'm not feeling good, if I'm feeling off or sick in some way, I'm going to find myself off on doing and keeping up with my habits. So what's so important is developing that skill of resiliency and discipline that's going to force you back into the habits that you know you need to be doing that are going to serve you and that also are going to help take you away so you can replace from the habits that you know are not serving you. All right. And then number 4 is reaching out to someone who gets it. So not only is having a habit around community super important, I think having a habit around reaching out when you are in crisis. And what I mean when I say crisis is at any time you're then going to engage in a behavior or activity that you then will regret tomorrow, 1 year, 5 years from now. Reach out to someone first. This and part of my 12-step program has been a life changer, is that when I am struggling, when I am starting to see the path of going back to a substance or a behavior that I'm really wanting to work to not have that be the substance and behavior that I go to, talking with someone else who understands and gets it real time is an absolute game changer. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. One of the hardest things that I still struggle with a lot. is reaching out when I am feeling alone, scared, isolated, hurt, doubtful, worried, anything. Anything that I might be feeling that's causing me to perhaps believe that using a substance or engaging in a behavior is going to be the answer. When deep down, I know, I know that that's not true. And I know that that's a lie. So as soon as I can start calling out that lie, and as soon as I can bring voice to it in a way that's not in a solo ISO chamber, right, that actually has some reciprocation in it, the sooner I'm going to start seeing the shifts in my life in a monumental way. All right, lastly, is define what freedom looks like to you. I believe that we are all on this earth to be able to live a life where freedom is a possibility. Freedom from our fears, freedom from our doubts, freedom from our insecurities, freedom from anything causing us to feel less than, freedom from anything causing us to feel that we don't belong. And so, with that, I really want to encourage you to recognize that within yourself, if there is anything holding you back from freedom, freedom to truly believe that who you are, as you are, just as you are, is somehow wrong or bad, and that in some way you need something to help you now feel more normal, that is not freedom, my friends. That is imprisonment. That is confinement. So recognizing that within myself has been one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, is to realize, wait a second, what I truly thought was freedom was actually imprisoning myself. And now, now that I am breaking free of the substances that have held me back for so many years, I can see that on the other side of the things that have been holding me back is a new liberation, is a new freedom. But it's going to come with discomfort. It's going to come with awkwardness. It's going to come with vulnerability. It's going to come with moments of courageous acts of putting myself out there in ways that I didn't think was possible. Moments of just pushing through fear and doubt and insecurity that had been building in me for so many years, that I allowed substances and certain numbing behaviors to hide away from. So this process is not an easy one, but it is one that's worth it. And it is one that you're not alone in. And so being able to have those that you can reach out to, whether it's through the 12-step programs, whether it's through getting a sponsor, having a sponsor myself in my own AA program has been everything to me. And, having that person that I can call to and reach out to when I'm scared and afraid is everything, because there's a certain level of trust and safety that I just don't think I really have ever had. So reach out, know that you're not alone. Reach out to me if you want a friend to talk to. I would be happy to give you so many ideas and suggestions on how you can break free of everything that's keeping you and holding you in imprisonment within your own mind and within your own self. So with that, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. I am super excited with a couple of programs that I have coming out. I hope that you can join me. I would love to offer you for free. I have a program called From Tension to Trust, and how to give empathetic and honest feedback in a way that can really move to trust, that can really move to a level of safety with you and other relationships, because it comes from a pure and honest place that we win. We together are here to win. It's not about me against you. It's not about us versus them. It's not about any dichotomies that separate us ever. It's always about how we can connect and align so that there always can be the greatest win for everyone. So being able to find that place and being able to move in that direction is so challenging. And so with this class, I am really excited to be able to offer tips and solutions that can help you. So I'll include a link in the show notes and also the code that you can use so you can go for free. All right. And then also, I'd love for you to join my bi-weekly newsletter. If you're hit and miss on the podcast, but do want to keep in touch with what I've got going on and different episodes I have coming up, take a click of the link that I have and join. And I promise no more than once every other week you will hear from me. All right. Thank you so much for joining today. Truly appreciate you being a part of the conversation. I would love if you struggle in any way with moving past your own addictions that are causing you from becoming the best person you want to be. I want to hear from you. I would love for you to consider becoming a guest on the Thrive and Shine HR podcast. So let's connect. All right. Thank you so much for joining today. And with that, every day is a new day to thrive and shine in HR. Bye, everybody.